My wife of 8 years had an affair and shattered me. The clock ticked methodically on the wall, its rhythmic cadence echoing through the empty kitchen. I stood there gripping the cold edge of the countertop, my eyes fixed on the empty wine glass she'd left behind, its faint lipstick stain like a mocking signature. 8 years of marriage, a lifetime of shared dreams, and yet it all felt like a lie. I replayed her words in my mind, each syllable cutting deeper. It just happened. I never meant to hurt you. She had said it with tears in her eyes, but her face was a stranger's. I could barely breathe. I wanted to scream, to shatter something, anything, just to feel something other than this hollow ache. The affair wasn't just a betrayal. It was a cataclysm that shattered my world. It was discovering that the woman I loved, the woman I trusted, had given herself to someone else. My mind raced through the years, the holidays, the lazy Sunday mornings, the late-night whispers. Which moments were real? Which were lies? I had to know. I needed to understand how deep this went, how long she'd been deceiving me. The truth was a poison I couldn't help but drink. I hired a private investigator, an old friend named Carl who owed me a favor. He was discreet and ruthless, the kind of man who could find secrets buried in concrete. It didn't take him long. 2 days later, he handed me a manila envelope, his face grim. She's been seeing him for over a year. His name's Michael Thompson. Divorced, works at her office. They meet at a hotel downtown every Thursday. I felt the ground give way beneath me. A year, 12 months of deceit, 52 weeks of lies. My mind spiraled as I opened the envelope. Photographs spilled out, grainy images of them laughing at a cafe, holding hands, kissing in the shadows. Each picture was a dagger, and with each stab, the man I was died a little more. I confronted her that night. I held up the photographs, watched the color drain from her face. She didn't deny it. Her shoulders sagged. Her eyes brimmed with tears. But she didn't deny it. "I never wanted you to find out like this," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I never wanted to hurt you." Then why? My voice was barely a whisper, hoarse with pain. "Why did you do it?" She looked away, her fingers twisting nervously. "I don't know. I felt lost. I was lonely. And he made me feel seen. Wanted." A bitter laugh escaped my lips. Lonely? I had given her everything, my love, my loyalty, my life. How could she have been lonely? How could she have been so selfish? I left that night, drove aimlessly through the city, my hands trembling on the steering wheel. I ended up at Carl's place, collapsing on his couch as the weight of betrayal crushed me. For days, I existed in a fog, barely eating, barely sleeping. The world moved around me, but I was frozen in time, stuck in that moment of realization. Friends called, family checked in, but I couldn't face them. I couldn't bear their pity, their questions, but I needed answers. I needed to know if this was just a fling or something deeper. I needed to know if she loved him. I confronted her, again, this time calmer, more controlled. "Do you love him?" She hesitated, her eyes flickering with guilt. I don't know. It felt real at the time. But now, I don't know. Her indecision was another knife in my heart. How could she not know? How could she be so careless? With my love, my trust, I asked her to leave. I needed space, needed time to breathe. She moved in with her sister, giving me the house that was now a mausoleum of broken dreams and shattered trust. Weeks passed. I tried to piece myself together, tried to make sense of the chaos. But the questions wouldn't stop. Had she ever loved me? Was our marriage a lie? One evening, Carl showed up unannounced, his expression troubled. "I found something you need to see." He handed me another envelope, this one thicker than the last. I opened it with trembling hands, the contents spilling out, a series of emails, text messages, receipts. It was all there, the entire timeline of her affair, meticulously documented. But it was worse than I imagined. It hadn't been a year. It had been 2. And it hadn't just been one man. There were others, brief encounters, fleeting affairs. She had been living a double life, deceiving me for years. I felt the world collapse around me. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew, was a stranger, a liar, a fraud. I confronted her one last time. I showed her the evidence, watched the shock and horror wash over her face. She tried to explain, tried to apologize, but her words were meaningless. "I don't even know who you are anymore," I whispered, my voice hollow. "You've destroyed everything. Everything we built. Everything we were." She broke down, begging for forgiveness, pleading for another chance. But I was done. I was broken beyond repair. I filed for divorce the next day. There was no reconciliation, no closure. The days that followed were a blur of paperwork, packing boxes, and painful goodbyes. I moved out of the house we had shared, leaving behind the echoes of laughter that now felt like cruel taunts. I found a small apartment on the other side of town, sparse and impersonal. But it was mine. A fresh start, no ghosts haunting its hallways. The first night was the hardest. The silence was suffocating, pressing down on me like a weight I couldn't lift. I sat on the floor, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes, and stared at my phone. Her number was still saved, her face still smiling in my photos. I deleted them all, one by one, my chest tightening with each swipe. It was a small act of defiance, but it felt monumental. Days turned to weeks, and I settled into a routine. Work was a distraction, a place where I could pretend everything was fine. My co-workers tiptoed around me, their pity disguised as politeness. I hated it. I hated that she had reduced me to this, a broken man, a cautionary tale. One evening, Carl called. He insisted on taking me out for a drink. I was reluctant, but he wouldn't take no for an answer. We ended up at a dimly lit bar, the kind where no one asks questions and the whiskey burns just right. "You're surviving," Carl said, his voice gruff but gentle. "But you need to start living again." I laughed bitterly. "How am I supposed to do that? She destroyed everything." "She didn't destroy you," he countered. "She doesn't get that power." His words lingered with me long after we parted. She didn't get that power. She didn't get to keep me trapped in this misery. I started seeing a therapist. It was a humbling experience, admitting that I needed help, that I couldn't navigate this pain alone. Dr. Monroe was patient, letting me unravel at my own pace. She didn't offer easy answers, but she helped me understand that healing wasn't linear. Some days would be better than others, and that was okay. Slowly, the fog began to lift. I reconnected with old friends, went to the gym, took long walks, just to feel the sun on my face. I was still broken, but the pieces were beginning to shift, to find new places to fit. And then one day she called. Her name flashed on my screen and my heart stopped. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Hello?" My voice was cold, guarded. "Hi, it's me." Her voice was hesitant, fragile. I just wanted to see how you're doing." The audacity of it stunned me. She had the nerve to ask how I was doing, after everything she had done? "I'm surviving," I replied flatly. "What do you want?" There was a long pause. "I miss you. I miss us." Her voice cracked, and I could hear the tears she was holding back. "I made a terrible mistake. I'm so sorry. I know I don't deserve it, but could we talk? Just once, please?" My chest tightened, anger and pain twisting together. I wanted to scream at her, to tell her how she had ruined me, how she had destroyed everything we had. But instead, I took a deep breath. There's nothing left to talk about. You made your choices. You have to live with them. I hung up before she could respond, my hands shaking. My heart was racing, but there was a strange relief that followed, a sense of closure. I didn't need her explanations or her apologies. I didn't need her at all. After that, I focused on moving forward. I went back to therapy, poured myself into my work, and slowly, the pain began to dull. It was still there, a scar that would never fully heal, but it no longer controlled me. Months later, I ran into her at the grocery store. She looked different, tired, hollow. Her eyes widened when she saw me, and for a moment I saw the woman I had loved, the woman who had betrayed me. But the pain was distant now, like an echo of a bad dream. We exchanged polite nods, no words. There was nothing left to say. She was just another stranger, another face in the crowd, and for the first time in a long time, I felt free. I walked out of the store, the sun warm on my face, and realized I was smiling. It wasn't a big smile, but it was real, genuine. I was moving on, and that was the greatest victory of all. Life didn't magically become perfect after that encounter, but it became mine again. I threw myself into new projects at work, volunteered on weekends, and even picked up an old guitar that had been gathering dust in my closet for years. Music became a way to process the pain, each chord a step toward healing. Carl remained a constant presence, dragging me to poker nights and barbecues, never letting me wallow for too long. He never said it out loud, but I knew he was watching my back, making sure I didn't drown in the darkness she had left behind. One evening, he showed up with tickets to a live music event downtown. "You need to get out more. Besides, I hear the singer's amazing." I rolled my eyes but went along. The venue was cozy, dimly lit with small round tables scattered around the stage. I nursed a drink as the performer walked out. A woman with curly hair, a guitar slung over her shoulder, her presence electric. When she began to sing, her voice was raw, vulnerable, like she was baring her soul. I was mesmerized. The way she poured emotion into every word felt familiar, like she was singing my pain, my journey. By the end of her set, the audience was spellbound, applause echoing off the walls. Carl grinned, nudging me. "You look like you've just seen a ghost." I laughed, shaking my head. "No, I needed that." After the show, I found myself waiting by the bar, hoping to catch a word with her. When she finally walked over, she was all smiles, her energy contagious. "You were incredible," I blurted out, feeling foolishly starstruck. "I've never heard anything like it." She laughed, a sound like bells. "Thank you. I just try to keep it real, you know." We started talking, first about music, then about life. Her name was Lena. She had an easy way about her, open and genuine, no pretenses. I found myself telling her about my own attempts at music, about dusting off the old guitar. She lit up. "You should come by the open mic night next week. Play something." I hesitated, instinctively wanting to decline. But then I remembered Carl's words. I needed to start living again. "Yeah, maybe I will." We exchanged numbers, and for the first time since my life had shattered, I felt a spark of hope. That night, as I lay in my empty apartment, I couldn't stop thinking about her laugh, her smile, the way her voice had wrapped around my soul and made me feel alive again. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. The next week, I showed up at the open mic night, my heart pounding in my chest. Lena was there cheering me on as I fumbled through an old song I barely remembered how to play. It was messy, imperfect, but she clapped like I was a rock star. We started spending more time together, grabbing coffee after her gigs, exchanging song ideas. She was nothing like my ex, uncomplicated, honest, unafraid to be herself. I didn't realize how much I needed that until she was there, challenging me to be honest too. One night, after another open mic performance, we sat on the curb outside the venue, sharing fries from a paper bag. She nudged me playfully. No, you've got a story in you. I can hear it when you play. I looked at her, the streetlights casting a golden glow around her curls. Yeah, I guess I do. She smiled, her eyes soft. Then tell it. Don't be afraid to let people see you. Her words lingered, breaking down walls I hadn't realized I'd built. She made me want to be better, to be whole again. I leaned in, my heart racing, and kissed her. She tasted like salt and laughter, like hope. For the first time in a long time, I felt the pieces of my shattered heart beginning to come together, not in the same way they had been before, but in a new, beautiful mosaic. I had survived, and now I was ready to live. Lena and I continued to grow closer, our connection deepening with every shared song, every vulnerable conversation under the stars. She was a breath of fresh air, a reminder that life could be beautiful even after the storm. But healing is never a straight line. There were days when the past clawed at me, memories of my ex and her betrayal resurfacing like ghosts. I would catch myself questioning everything, my judgment, my worth, my ability to trust again. Lena noticed. She always did. One evening, as we sat in her tiny apartment surrounded by her scattered sheet music, she put her guitar down and looked at me with those piercing eyes that seemed to see right through me. "You're holding back," she said softly. "What's keeping you from being here? Really being here?" I looked away, the truth heavy on my tongue. "It's hard. I was shattered, Lena. I don't know how to trust anymore." She reached out, her fingers warm on mine. "I'm not her. And you're not who you were with her. It's okay to be scared, but don't let fear steal this from us." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut, raw and honest. She was right. I was letting my past dictate my present, building walls that kept her at a distance. "I don't know how to let go," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "She hurt me so deeply. It feels like the wound never really healed." Lena moved closer, her eyes softening. "Then let's heal it. Together. But you have to let me in." That night I told her everything, the pain, the betrayal, the nights I cried alone in that empty apartment, feeling like I would never be whole again. She listened without judgment, her fingers gently tracing circles on my back, grounding me. When I finished, there were tears in her eyes. "You didn't deserve any of that, but you deserve happiness now. You deserve love." It was the first time I believed it. We grew even closer after that, our bond fortified by honesty and vulnerability. I started writing songs again, pouring my heart into the lyrics. Lena encouraged me to perform them at the open mic nights, and eventually I did. The first time I sang a song about my heartbreak, the room went silent, the audience captivated by the raw emotion. When I finished, there was a beat of stunned silence before the applause erupted, louder than I'd ever heard before. Lena was beaming, tears shining in her eyes. When I stepped off the stage, she threw her arms around me. "That was incredible. You're incredible." I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I was finally letting go of the pain, transforming it into something beautiful. But life has a way of testing you just when you think you've found peace. One afternoon, as I was leaving the grocery store, I saw her, my ex-wife, standing by her car. She looked different, worn down, shadows under her eyes. She noticed me, her face crumpling as she walked over. "Hi," she said, her voice hesitant. "Can we talk?" I wanted to say no. I wanted to walk away and never look back. But something in her eyes stopped me. We sat on a bench nearby, the air heavy with unspoken words. She took a shaky breath. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. Truly. I ruined everything, and I've been paying for it every day since. I looked at her, the woman I once loved, the woman who had shattered me. I saw the regret in her eyes, the way her shoulders slumped under the weight of her guilt. It didn't erase what she did, but it made her human again, flawed and broken, just like me. I've moved on, I said, my voice steady. I won't forget what happened, but I don't hate you anymore. I can't carry that weight. Her eyes filled with tears and she nodded. I never meant to hurt you. I was lost, selfish. And I lost the best thing I ever had. A part of me felt vindicated, hearing her admit it. But another part felt nothing at all. I realized that she no longer had power over me. Her choices were her burden to carry, not mine. I hope you find peace, I said, standing up. But my life isn't tied to yours anymore. Goodbye. I walked away, my heart surprisingly light. There were no more ghosts chasing me. No more bitterness festering inside. I had closed that chapter for good. That night I told Lena about the encounter. She listened, holding my hand as I processed the emotions. When I was done, she smiled, softly. I'm proud of you. I kissed her, feeling the warmth of her love, the promise of a future untainted by the past. For the first time in a long time, I was free. Free to love, free to live, free to be whole again. And I knew that my story was just beginning. Months passed, and life began to find a new rhythm. Lena and I grew closer with every shared laugh, every whispered secret in the quiet hours of the night. Her presence was a balm to my once shattered heart, and together we were building something beautiful, something real. My music also flourished. I started performing regularly at local venues, pouring my emotions into each song. The pain, the healing, the hope, it all flowed through my voice, resonating with the audience. It was cathartic, a way to reclaim my narrative. One evening, after a particularly emotional performance, a man approached me. He looked familiar, but I couldn't place him. That was incredible, he said, his voice laced with emotion. Your lyrics, they hit close to home. Thank you, I replied, feeling a strange connection. I'm glad it resonated. He hesitated, his eyes flickering with unease. I owe you an apology. You don't know me, but I've been carrying this guilt for a long time. I'm Kyle. I was with your ex-wife. I didn't know she was married until it was too late. When I found out, I broke it off, but the damage was done. The world seemed to tilt for a moment. I stared at him, shock rendering me speechless. He was the other man, the one who shattered my marriage without even realizing it. Kyle's shoulders slumped, shame evident in his posture. I didn't come here to make excuses, I needed you to know that I'm sorry. If I'd known, I never would have gotten involved. I've hated myself for it ever since. I took a breath, my emotions swirling. Anger, pain, resentment, but also relief. Here was the truth, raw and unfiltered. The man who had unknowingly played a part in my heartbreak was standing before me, asking for forgiveness. For a long moment, I said nothing. Then I spoke, my voice steady. I appreciate your honesty. It doesn't change what happened, but I've moved on. I've found peace, and I won't let the past hold me back. Kyle looked at me, his eyes shimmering with gratitude. Thank you. I didn't deserve that. I wish you nothing but happiness. He turned and walked away, his figure disappearing into the night. I stood there, feeling the weight of closure settle in my chest. When I told Lena about the encounter, she listened, her fingers intertwined with mine. You're incredible, you know that? She whispered. To forgive him. It shows how far you've come. I kissed her, my heart full. I've come this far because of you. Life continued, brighter and more beautiful than I ever thought possible. Lena and I traveled together, making memories in new cities. Our laughter echoing through cobblestone streets and sunlit beaches. We wrote music, our melodies harmonizing in perfect sync. Then, one evening under a sky full of stars, I took her hand. I love you, Lena. I never thought I could feel this way again, but you've shown me that love is worth fighting for, worth trusting in. Tears sparkled in her eyes, and she smiled, her face radiant. I love you too, more than words could ever express. We stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, the universe spinning around us, infinite and full of possibilities. I knew then that I had found my home, not in a place, but in a person, in Lena. The past was behind me, its shadows fading as I stepped into the light of a new beginning. And this time, I was ready to embrace it fully. Our lives intertwined seamlessly after that night, our love story unfolding like the lyrics of the most beautiful song. Lena and I continued to make music together, our souls harmonizing in ways that went beyond melody. She became my muse, my partner, my everything. We spent lazy Sundays in her apartment, sunlight streaming through the windows as we strummed our guitars, laughing over half-written verses and silly rhymes. Evenings were spent at open mic nights, our duets captivating the audience, our chemistry palpable on stage. It was during one of these performances that a talent scout approached us, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "You two have something special," he said. "I want to help you get your music out there. I see a bright future for both of you." Lena's eyes widened with joy and she looked at me, her excitement infectious. "This is it. Our dream. It's happening." I felt a rush of exhilaration. I had come so far from the shattered man I once was. With Lena by my side, the future felt limitless. We started recording our songs, spending long nights in the studio, perfecting every note, every harmony. Our debut album was born from our shared experiences. The heartbreak, the healing, the love that grew from the ruins of my past. The album was a hit. People connected with the raw emotion in our lyrics, the authenticity of our journey. Our story resonated, and soon our music was playing on radios, streaming on platforms, reaching hearts far beyond our little town. We toured together, performing in crowded venues, the audience singing along to our songs. It was surreal, a dream, come true. But through all the chaos and excitement, Lena remained my anchor, my constant. One evening, after a sold-out show, we stood on the rooftop of our hotel, overlooking the city lights. Lena leaned against me, her head on my shoulder. All of this, it's more than I ever imagined." I wrapped my arms around her, holding her close. "I never thought I'd find this kind of happiness again. You saved me, Lena." She looked up at me, her eyes shimmering. We saved each other. Under the stars, I pulled out a small box, my heart pounding. I opened it, revealing a simple but elegant ring. "Lena, will you marry me?" Her eyes widened, tears streaming down her face as she laughed through her joy. "Yes. 1,000 times yes." I slipped the ring on her finger, and we kissed, our love sealed under the night sky. In that moment, nothing else mattered. Had found each other, built a life from the broken pieces, and turned pain into the most beautiful melody. We got married in a small, intimate ceremony surrounded by close friends and family. We sang our vows to each other, our voices blending in perfect harmony, a testament to our journey. Life wasn't perfect, no life ever is, but it was real, it was beautiful, and it was ours. Together, we continued to create, to love, to live. had once been shattered, but from the ruins, I rebuilt a life more extraordinary than I ever dreamed. And at the center of it all was Lena, my muse, my love, my forever. My wife of 8 years had an affair and shattered me, but from that pain I found the strength to rise again. I found love in the most unexpected place, and I learned that even after the deepest heartbreak, life could still be breathtakingly beautiful. The end. Years passed, and our lives continued to blossom. Lena and I became a celebrated duo in the music world, known not just for our harmonies but for the powerful stories our songs told. We toured the world, standing on stages before thousands of people, our voices echoing through vast arenas. But no matter how big the crowds got, it always felt intimate when I looked into her eyes, singing words that came from our hearts. We bought a house by the coast, a charming place with wide windows that welcomed the sunrise. It became our sanctuary, a place where creativity flowed freely. Our music room overlooked the ocean, and many mornings were spent writing lyrics while waves crashed rhythmically against the shore. Life was beautiful, but it wasn't without its challenges. The demands of fame, the relentless touring schedules, the pressure to always create something new. It could be overwhelming. Yet, through every high and low, Lena was there, her unwavering support keeping me grounded. We faced our struggles together, and each hurdle only strengthened our bond. We learned to communicate, to lean on each other when the world felt heavy. In her, I found a partner who truly understood me, someone who knew my scars and loved me not despite them, but because of them. One evening, as we sat on our porch watching the sunset, Lena rested her head on my shoulder. "Do you ever think about the past?" she asked softly. "About how far you've come?" I looked out at the horizon, the sky painted in hues of orange and pink. "Sometimes, but it feels like a different lifetime, like the man who went through all that heartbreak isn't the same man sitting here now." She intertwined her fingers with mine. "You've grown so much, and even though I wasn't there to see that part of your journey, I'm grateful to be here now, to be a part of this chapter." I kissed her forehead, my heart swelling with love. "You are this chapter, Lena. You're my new beginning." We sat in comfortable silence watching the sun dip below the waves. I knew then that the past no longer held power over me. It was just a story that led me to her. Our family grew too. A year later, we welcomed our first child, a beautiful baby girl with Lena's sparkling eyes and my unruly hair. We named her Melody, fitting for the daughter of 2 musicians. She became our greatest song, her laughter filling our home with a joy I never knew was possible. Watching Lena as a mother made me fall in love with her all over again. The way she sang lullabies, her voice soothing our little girl to sleep, was the most beautiful music I'd ever heard. We wrote songs inspired by our daughter, our love, our journey. Our albums evolved, reflecting the stages of our lives. Our fans grew with us, celebrating our milestones as if they were part of our family. I often thought about the pain that once consumed me, the betrayal that shattered my world. It seemed so distant now, like a shadow long chased away by the light. I realized that without that heartbreak, I wouldn't have found Lena, wouldn't have built this incredible life. I had learned to forgive, not just others, but myself. To let go of the anger, the bitterness, and to embrace the happiness that was waiting for me. One night, after putting Melody to sleep, Lena and I sat at our piano, our fingers dancing over the keys as we composed a new song. The lyrics flowed effortlessly, a melody of love, healing, and hope. We called it Broken to Beautiful, a tribute to the journey that brought us together. It became one of our most beloved songs, a testament to the power of love and resilience. Looking back, I realized that life doesn't always go the way you planned, But sometimes, the unexpected turns lead to the most extraordinary destinations. Had been shattered once, but from those broken pieces, I rebuilt a life more magnificent than I could have ever imagined. And through it all, Lena was by my side, my soulmate, my forever duet. As the years went on, we continued to create, to dream, to love. And through every note, every word, every memory we made, I was grateful for the journey that led me to this beautiful life. The end. Years flowed by like the melody of our favorite song, each verse adding to the story of our lives. Melody grew up surrounded by music, her laughter blending with the tunes that filled our home. She had a natural gift, her little fingers dancing, across piano keys before she could even spell her name. Watching her grow was one of life's greatest joys. She inherited Lena's passion and my stubborn determination, a perfect blend of our spirits. Together, we nurtured her talents, encouraging her to find her own voice, her own rhythm. Our family expanded once more with the birth of our son, Theo, a spirited boy with a curiosity that knew no bounds. He loved the drums, banging on anything he could find, filling our days with an energetic beat that kept us on our toes. We became a family band, our home alive with music and laughter. Lena and I continued our careers, but we made sure to balance fame with family. We turned down world tours to be there for recitals and birthdays, to never miss a bedtime story or a first step. Our love story was the foundation of our family. We remained each other's muses, partners in every sense. Through sleepless nights, with newborns and chaotic mornings getting kids to school, we faced it all together, our bond growing stronger with each challenge. But life, as always, had its complexities. My past, though far behind me, occasionally resurfaced in unexpected ways. One day, as I was sorting through old boxes in the attic, I stumbled upon a forgotten envelope. I opened it to find a letter from Amanda, unread, unopened, dated 3 years after our divorce. My heart skipped a beat. I had moved on, found love and happiness again, but the sight of her handwriting brought back memories I thought were long buried. I sat on the floor, the letter trembling in my hands. Lena found me there, concern flickering in her eyes. "Are you okay?" I showed her the letter, my voice low. "I never knew this existed. I don't even remember receiving it." Lena sat beside me, her presence grounding me. "Do you want to read it?" I hesitated, then nodded. "I think I need to." With her hand resting on mine, I unfolded the letter, the words hitting me like a wave. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I need you to know. I'm sorry for everything. I was selfish, and I hurt you in ways I can never take back. I lost myself, and in doing so, I lost you, the best part of my life. I heard about your music, about your success. I'm glad you found your voice again. You always deserved the world. I just wish I had been strong enough to give it to you. I hope someday you find peace, and maybe forgiveness. Take care of yourself, always. Amanda." I let out a breath. I didn't know I was holding, a tear escaping down my cheek. Lena squeezed my hand, her eyes filled with understanding. "How do you feel?" I closed my eyes, letting the words sink in. I think I finally understand. She was broken, too. We were just broken in different ways." Lena hugged me, her warmth enveloping me. "It's okay to let go." And I did. In that moment, I felt a weight lift off my chest. I forgave Amanda, not for her sake, but for mine. For the man I had become, the husband, the father, the musician. Placed the letter back in the box, letting the past rest where it belonged. I looked at Lena, gratitude overwhelming me. "I wouldn't be here without you." She smiled, her eyes sparkling. "And I wouldn't be me without you." We kissed, sealing the chapter with love. I knew then that my story wasn't about the pain that once shattered me, but about the love that rebuilt me. Amanda was a part of my past, a chapter that taught me resilience, strength, and forgiveness. But Lena was my present, my future, my forever. Together, we continued our journey, creating music, memories, and a legacy of love. And through it all, we sang our song, a melody of brokenness turned beautiful. The end. Years drifted by like notes on a breeze, each one adding harmony to the symphony of our lives. Melody and Theo grew, their laughter echoing through our home, their curiosity shaping them into remarkable individuals. Melody pursued her love for music, composing her own songs that carried raw emotion and powerful stories. She had her mother's voice and my knack for storytelling, weaving magic with every lyric. We watched her perform at school concerts, then at local venues, her star rising as she followed her passion. Theo, on the other hand, discovered a different calling. Though he still played the drums with relentless energy, his heart was drawn to technology. He built gadgets from old toys, his room a workshop of blinking lights and tangled wires. By high school, he was designing music software, blending his love for rhythm with innovation. Lena and I continued to make music, our albums reflecting the stages of our journey. We wrote about parenthood, about love that endures, about the challenges we faced and the triumphs we celebrated. Our fans grew with us, sharing in our story as it evolved. Through it all, our love remained the anchor. We faced the ups and downs of life together, supporting each other through writer's block, sleepless nights, and even the occasional midlife crisis. Yet, our foundation was unshakable, built on trust, respect, and unwavering affection. We made it a tradition to perform. As a family, our annual holiday concert becoming a cherished event. Melody would sing lead, Theo would drum, and Lena and I would harmonize, our voices blending in perfect unity. The crowd always cheered the loudest for Theo's improvised solos, his joy infectious. But life, as always, was unpredictable. One evening after another successful show, I received a message from an old acquaintance. It was from Daniel, a mutual friend from the past, someone who had known Amanda. "Hey, it's been a long time. I thought you should know. Amanda passed away last week. She'd been sick for a while. I'm sorry." The words blurred before my eyes. Amanda? Gone? A part of me felt a strange emptiness, like losing someone you once knew intimately but hadn't thought about in years. She had been my first love, my first heartbreak, the person who shattered me. And yet she was also the catalyst for my rebirth. Lena found me sitting on our bed, the message still open on my phone. She sat beside me, concern etched on her face. What happened? I showed her the message, my voice low. She's gone. Amanda's gone. Lena took my hand, her fingers warm against mine. How are you feeling? I searched for an answer but found none. I don't know. Sad, I think. Not because of what we lost, but because she never found her peace. Lena rested her head on my shoulder. You forgave her long ago. You set yourself free. I hope she found her own freedom in the end. I nodded, the ache in my chest softening. I thought of her letter, her apology, her regrets. She had been lost, broken in ways I couldn't fix. I whispered a silent goodbye, wishing her peace wherever she was. A few weeks later, I received another letter, this time from Amanda's lawyer. It was her will. To my surprise, she had left me a box of keepsakes, things she thought I should have. Lena stood by my side as I opened it. Inside, there were photos of us from our early years, concert tickets from shows we attended, and a journal filled with her thoughts. As I flipped through the pages, I realized she had never stopped caring, even after everything that happened. There was one last envelope at the bottom. It was addressed to me, her handwriting shaky. "For when you're ready." I opened it, tears blurring my vision as I read her final words. "I never stopped loving you. I was just too broken to show it. I'm sorry for all the pain, for every tear I caused. I hope you found happiness, the kind I could never give you. Goodbye, and thank you for everything." My heart ached, but there was no anger, no resentment, only compassion. I hoped she found the peace she had been searching for. I whispered a prayer, not for closure, but for her soul to rest. I looked at Lena, tears in my eyes. She was a part of my past. But you're my present, my future. "Thank you for loving me through all of this." Lena hugged me tight. "I'll love you through everything, always." We closed the box, placing it on a high shelf, a memory of a chapter that shaped me but no longer defined me. I felt a sense of finality, of acceptance. The past was at peace, and my heart was finally whole. Life moved forward, and so did we. We continued to create, to love, to grow. Our children flourished, our music evolved, and our love deepened. I realized that happiness isn't about forgetting the pain, but embracing the journey, every beautiful, heartbreaking, life-changing part of it. We sang our story, not of shattered hearts, but of love rebuilt, of forgiveness and hope. And as our voices harmonized, I knew that our melody would echo through generations. Years later, as the sun began to set on our golden years, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought us here. Lena and I were sitting on our porch, watching the horizon paint the sky in hues of orange and pink. Our hands were intertwined, our fingers still fitting perfectly together, even after all this time. Melody had become a renowned singer-songwriter, her music touching hearts worldwide. Her lyrics were raw and real, shaped by the honesty she grew up around. She often told us that watching us navigate love and pain inspired her to write fearlessly. Theo had transformed his passion for technology into a career that changed the music industry. He created revolutionary soundscapes, blending his mother's melodies with futuristic beats. Sometimes we'd catch him collaborating with his sister, their creative synergy electrifying. Our family remained close, anchored by love and trust. We spent holidays together, laughing and reminiscing, our home filled with music, stories, and joy. Lena and I grew older, but our love never waned. It evolved, maturing like fine wine, growing deeper with each passing day. One afternoon, as I organized old boxes, I stumbled upon the keepsake box Amanda had left me. It was dusty, untouched for decades. I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the lid. Lena walked in, her eyes warm. "You never opened it again, did you?" I shook my head. I didn't need to. I found peace without it. She smiled, understanding in her gaze. Maybe it's time to let it go. We walked to the backyard, where the trees swayed gently in the breeze. Together, we opened the box, releasing its contents into the wind. Photos, letters, and memories scattered, carried away by the air, like whispers of a past long gone. It felt freeing, like releasing the last remnants of pain. Amanda's memory no longer haunted me. It was just a chapter in my story, one that led me to where I was meant to be. I looked at Lena, my heart swelling with gratitude. "I never thought I could feel this whole." She rested her head on my shoulder. "Love does that. It heals, even the deepest wounds." We stood there, watching the past float away, grounding ourselves in the present. Years later, when our grandchildren gathered around, asking us to tell them stories, we shared tales of our adventures, of love and loss, of courage and redemption. I spoke of the music we made, the challenges we faced, the victories we celebrated. But most importantly, I told them about the power of forgiveness, how it saved me, how it saved us. I taught them that life is unpredictable, that love isn't always easy, but it's worth fighting for. And as they laughed and listened, their eyes wide with wonder, I realized that our story would live on through them, through the legacy of love we built. That night, as Lena and I sat on the porch once more, I looked at the stars and whispered a silent prayer of gratitude for the journey, for the pain, for the love that rebuilt me, for Lena, who taught me to trust again, for a life that was beautifully imperfectly whole. The end. As the seasons shifted, so too did the landscape of our lives. The world around us grew quieter in some ways, yet richer in others. Our children flourished into adulthood, each carving their own path while remaining deeply rooted in the love and lessons they'd learned from us. Melody's career continued to soar, her albums becoming anthems of a generation. Theo's influence on the music industry became so profound that some of the biggest artists in the world sought his expertise, blending his digital soundscapes with their songs. But through it all, it was the quiet moments that meant the most. Lena and I took long walks, often hand in hand, down the same paths we'd walked when we were young and reckless, dreaming of a future that seemed so distant back then. We'd stop by the old oak tree in the park where we'd shared our first kiss, remembering how life felt simpler then. We laughed about the dreams we once had that had changed over the years, never imagining the family we'd build, the adventures we'd embark on. But the deepest change wasn't in the music or the world around us. It was in us. The more we grew together, the more I realized how much we had healed, how deeply we had come to understand the power of love and resilience. One chilly evening, after we had tucked the kids into bed and the house was quiet, Lena and I sat in our living room, the soft glow of the fireplace casting shadows on the walls. She turned to me, her expression serene yet thoughtful. "You ever wonder what would have happened if we hadn't gone through everything we did?" she asked, her voice soft, like she was afraid to disturb the peace we'd found. I thought for a moment, looking into the fire, the crackling logs offering comfort. "I used to. But I think if we hadn't faced all of that pain, we wouldn't be who we are now. We wouldn't have found this quiet love that runs deeper than anything else." She smiled, the kind of smile that made her eyes light up with warmth. "You're right, it wasn't easy, but I think that's what makes it all worth it." I leaned back, my heart full of gratitude. "I'm glad I never gave up on us." Lena reached for my hand, squeezing it tightly. "I'm glad you never did either. There were times when I thought we might not make it, but we always did. Together." We sat in silence for a while, the weight of our words settling in the room like a warm blanket. Outside, the stars sparkled above us, their light timeless, just like the love that had weathered so many storms. As the years went by, our bond grew deeper. We watched the world around us change. Our children grew older, friends came and went, and we found ourselves embracing a new kind of peace that only comes with time. But no matter how much life evolved, there was one constant: us. When we eventually retired from the spotlight, Melody and Theo encouraged us to write a book, our story, told from both of our perspectives. It was something that had always been in the back of our minds, but we hadn't had the time to sit down and really explore it until now. It wasn't just about the music or the success. It was about the heart of the story, how love can heal, how forgiveness can rebuild even the most shattered parts of a person. And when the book was published, it resonated with so many people. We received letters, messages, and calls from all over, people who had been inspired by our journey. It was humbling, knowing that our story had touched others in ways we could never have imagined. And as we sat on our porch in the evenings, now with gray hair and softer eyes, we realized that the love we had built, through trials, triumphs, and everything in between was the most precious thing we'd ever created. It was the legacy we would leave behind, not just through our music, but through the hearts we had touched, the people we had helped to heal. Lena squeezed my hand, her voice filled with the same quiet certainty it had always had. We did it, didn't we? I smiled, the weight of the years pressing gently on my soul. Yes, we did. And in that moment, as the world around us continued to move forward, we knew that the story we had written together would never truly end. It would live on in the music, in the people, in the love that had transformed us. The end, though not really, because love never ends. As the years unfurled before us like a familiar melody, Lena and I found ourselves contemplating the vast tapestry we had woven together. The chapters of our lives, our struggles, triumphs, and lessons, had given us something far more precious than we had ever imagined. Our children had blossomed into adults with strong convictions and big dreams, and they often returned home with stories of their own, filling the house with laughter and love. But as time moved on, a subtle shift occurred within us. It was as though we could see the horizon now with clearer eyes, our souls attuned to the rhythms of the world around us, yet at peace with the inner silence we'd cultivated over the years. One autumn afternoon, we sat in the garden, surrounded by the golden hues of leaves that had fallen from the trees we had planted when Melody was just a child. The breeze carried a sense of calm, the weight of the years not heavy but gentle, like an old friend's embrace. Lena turned to me with a contemplative look. "I've been thinking," she said quietly, "about all that we've gone through, and how it's shaped us, how it shaped our family." I smiled, tracing the lines of her hand. "You've been thinking again, haven't you?" She chuckled softly. "Maybe just a little. But there's something I need to tell you. I don't want to wait any longer." I raised an eyebrow, intrigued by the gravity in her voice. "What is it?" Lena took a deep breath, her gaze focused on the sky. "I want us to leave behind a legacy of more than just our story. I want to give our family something that lives on, something that speaks of the heart of who we are. It's time we start that foundation." The weight of her words hung in the air between us, and I felt a sudden clarity wash over me. We had spent so many years rebuilding, healing, and growing. Now it was time to pass that on in a way that would continue to touch lives long after we were gone. "What are you thinking?" I asked, sensing the new purpose that had ignited within her. "I want to establish a scholarship," she said, her voice filled with resolve. "For young artists, musicians, and creators, those who need a chance to be seen, to be heard. I want to help them find their voice, the way we found ours, despite everything." Her idea was simple, yet profoundly impactful. A way to give back to the world that had shaped us, to open doors for others who had the same passion, the same fire that had once burned in our hearts. "I love it," I replied. "Let's do it. Let's make it happen." And so, we set out to build something beyond our own time. We started the foundation, pouring ourselves into it as much as we had poured into our music, our family, and each other. We created an initiative that provided scholarships to talented individuals from all backgrounds, with a focus on those who struggled to afford education and access to creative opportunities. As the years passed, the foundation grew, touching countless lives and giving rise to new artists whose work reflected the values we had fought for: resilience, creativity, and love. Melody and Theo, now both settled in their own lives, became passionate advocates for the cause, working alongside us to help nurture young talent. It was humbling to see the legacy take shape, not just in the projects we funded or the awards given, but in the stories of people who found their voice because of the opportunities we'd fought to create. In the letters, in the artwork, in the music, We saw reflections of our own journey, of the power of healing, of growth, and of the unbreakable bond that had brought us here. And so, as we stood together at the opening of an art exhibit funded by the scholarship, watching the new generation of creators share their work with the world, Lena squeezed my hand, her smile as bright as it had been all those years ago. "We did it," she said, her voice filled with the same warmth I had always known. I looked at her, feeling the weight of our shared history and the brilliance of everything we had built. We did, didn't we? Our love had never been about perfection. It had been about evolution, about adapting, about finding beauty in the broken pieces and strength in the rebuild. Our legacy wasn't just the music or the foundation. It was the message we sent out into the world, that love, when nurtured, could carry us through anything. That even in the face of unimaginable pain, there was always room for redemption, for growth, and for healing. As the crowd around us celebrated the future, we stood quietly, knowing that our journey was far from over. The love we had shared, tested by time, fortified by forgiveness, had now woven itself into the very fabric of the world, and it would live on in the hearts of those we touched, in the stories that were yet to be written. The end. The years that followed were filled with unexpected joys, quieter moments of reflection, and occasional bursts of excitement as new challenges arose. The foundation we had built together continued to thrive, extending its reach further than we had initially imagined. Young artists from all over the world found opportunities through it, using their talents to tell stories that spanned cultures, generations, and genres. Lena and I, now well into our twilight years, often found ourselves sitting side by side, reflecting on the winding road that had led us here. The children were grown with their own families, each following their own unique path, one that we had helped pave in the most meaningful way possible. One afternoon, we visited the now-renowned music hall where our story had once begun, the stage where our voices first rang out and where the echoes of our history could still be felt in the songs of new artists. We stood at the entrance, the familiar scent of aged wood and velvet filling the air, as if the building itself had memories of its own. "What do you think?" Lena asked, her hand brushing the golden plaque that hung by the doors. I looked at the building, seeing not just the past, but the future that had been born from it. "It's more than I ever imagined, more than I ever expected. We did good, didn't we?" Lena smiled, a soft laugh escaping her lips. "We did." It was an understatement. We had done more than good. We had transformed lives, rebuilt a world that had once seemed shattered, and in the process, had found a deeper, more profound love than we could have ever imagined. But there was still more to do, more stories to share, and more lives to touch. The work of our foundation, the stories of the artists we had helped, and the legacy of resilience and creativity we had passed on would continue. It was during this quiet period of our lives, when the public attention had faded into the background, that we started thinking about a final project. A book. Not the one we had written years ago, but a collection of the letters we had received over the decades, from young artists, from families whose lives had been changed, from people who had found hope in our journey. We didn't know where this project would take us, but we felt it was the last chapter we needed to write, the culmination of everything we had worked for, all that we had built together. Lena and I would spend hours in the evenings sitting at the kitchen table, reading through old letters, reminiscing about the highs and lows of our life together. We laughed over stories of misadventures, teared up at the words of gratitude, and marveled at the way the world had shifted around us. And through it all, the constant, unwavering truth was clear. The love that had sustained us, that had carried us through all the trials and triumphs, was the heart of it all. As we prepared for the release of the book, a deep sense of fulfillment washed over me. This was the final chapter, the story we had lived for. the one that would echo in the hearts of others long after we were gone. The day the book was published, we stood at the front of a small gathering of friends and family, and I could see the pride in Lena's eyes. "This is it," she whispered, her voice filled with quiet reverence. "This is our legacy." And I knew in that moment that we had done everything we set out to do. We had lived a life of meaning, of love, of purpose. Our story, filled with intrigue, secrets, and unexpected twists, had come to its natural end, but the impact of that story would never truly fade. Our children, their children, and those we had touched through our work would carry the torch forward. Our story would live on, one song, one painting, one new creation at a time. The end. As the years continued their steady march, I found myself reflecting on the changes, on the people whose lives we had touched, and the unexpected ways our legacy had unfolded. It was something I hadn't fully understood until now. The idea that a life well lived doesn't just end with you. It carries on in the hearts of those you inspire, the connections you make, and the ripple effect of every small act of kindness, creativity, or shared wisdom. Lena, ever the force of quiet strength, had continued to shine in her own way. Though she had stepped back from the public eye in the later years, her influence remained at the core of everything the foundation had achieved. It was her vision, her compassion, her quiet leadership that had created the environment where young artists could truly thrive. She often said that it wasn't about making headlines. It was about making a difference in the quieter corners of the world. We had always dreamed of reaching beyond what we could touch with our own hands, and now, as I looked back, I saw how our dreams had evolved. Our children, Melody, Lucas, and James, had all become pillars of the foundation, each bringing their unique perspectives and passions to its growth. Melody had become a prominent figure in the arts community, often sought after for her insight into new trends and emerging talent. Lucas had developed a network of partners who helped fund the scholarships for creators who needed it most, often working behind the scenes, but with a sharp business sense that had proved invaluable. And James, our quiet dreamer, had turned his love for literature into a project that connected authors and poets from all over the world, creating a platform for storytelling that transcended boundaries. Each of them had taken a piece of what Lena and I had started and turned it into something bigger than we could have imagined. But time, as it always does, kept slipping away. One evening, as the first signs of winter began to settle in, we sat in our favorite spot by the fire again. A quiet stillness between us. There was an understanding between Lena and me, a deep, unspoken connection that had developed over the years. We had been through so much, together and apart, and now we were simply content. "We've done well, haven't we?" I asked her, the weight of a lifetime of memories in the simple question. She smiled softly, the kind of smile that always seemed to reach her eyes. "Better than we ever dreamed." I could feel that the time was coming. The final chapters of our own story were approaching, but in a way, it was comforting. We had built something that would endure long after we were gone, something that was larger than us, something that would continue to inspire for generations. It felt like we had come full circle, like we had lived not only for ourselves, but for something much bigger. And one day, Lena passed away in her sleep. It was peaceful, the kind of departure that we had both hoped for when the time came, but it left an emptiness in my heart that nothing could fill. The foundation carried on. Melody, now the chairwoman, spoke at conferences, pushing the mission forward with the same compassion and fierce dedication her mother had shown. The walls of our home, once filled with echoes of laughter and the hum of creative energy, now stood quiet, a testament to the life Lena had lived. But I took comfort in the idea that this, too, was part of the story. Nothing truly ends, I realized. The ripples we create continue, even after we're gone. At my own funeral years later, surrounded by friends, family, and artists whose lives we had touched, the words that lingered weren't about my achievements. They were about what had been passed on, about the lives that had been changed, the voices that had found their echo, the future that was being shaped. As the sun set on that final chapter, I could see the threads of our story weaving their way into the tapestry of time, stretching far, beyond the years we had lived. And in those moments, as the world moved on, I was at peace. The end. But only the beginning of another story. And so, even after the final breaths, the work, the legacy, and the spirit of what we had built lived on. It was a quiet kind of immortality, one that wasn't marked by monuments or grand tributes, but by the ongoing transformation of the world around us. The foundation continued to flourish under the watchful eyes of those who had grown up alongside it, nurtured by the very values we had instilled: creativity, integrity, and the belief that every voice, no matter how small, could change the world. Melody, having stepped into her mother's shoes with grace, had become the true force that guided the foundation's evolution. She spoke with the same passion Lena had once carried, but her words now resonated with the experience of someone who had lived through the legacy firsthand. She often spoke of how our vision had shaped the future, always emphasizing the importance of nurturing not just talent, but character, teaching young artists to see the world with empathy, to create with purpose, and to never lose sight of the impact their work could have. One of the most profound moments came years later, at the opening of the Global Creators Summit, a project that had started as an idea within our family, and now stood as one of the most anticipated events in the art world. It was a week-long event, bringing together thousands of artists, writers, filmmakers, and creators of every medium to share, learn, and collaborate. A vast network of creators, mentors, and philanthropists worked together, blending cultures and ideas into a melting pot of possibilities. I remember sitting in the audience, hearing the final speaker take the stage, a young artist whose works had taken the world by storm. She spoke about the importance of community, of what had been built before her, a legacy that allowed her to follow her dreams. As she paused for a moment, her eyes scanning the audience, she spoke the words that would stay with me forever. If it wasn't for the foundation, for the people who believed in us when no one else would, none of this would be possible. A single tear welled up in my eye as I looked around at the faces of those who had gathered, creators whose lives had been altered, who had become champions in their own right, passing the torch to the next generation. It wasn't about fame or wealth anymore. It was about giving others the tools to realize their full potential and helping them become catalysts of change in the world. I had spent years thinking about what legacy meant, how it was defined, and whether it was enough to simply leave behind something tangible. But what I came to understand through every twist and turn, every struggle and victory, was that the truest legacy isn't found in what you leave behind physically. It's in the lives you touch, the doors you open, the hearts you inspire, and when I passed on, long after the final chapter of my life had closed, the world continued to move forward, but it was a world irrevocably changed by the love, the work, and the sacrifice Lena and I had given. It wasn't just our children or our foundation that carried it forward. It was the artists, the creators, the dreamers who had picked up where we left off. They, too, were now the ones planting seeds for a future that would flourish, a future built on the foundation we had so lovingly nurtured. As the days turned into years, the world continued to evolve, but there was one constant. Creativity never stopped. It never would. And in the stillness of my memory, I could almost hear Lena's voice, ever steady and wise, whispering through the fabric of time. Keep creating. Keep believing. It was the simplest yet most profound truth. The end or perhaps just another beginning. Years passed, and the foundation evolved beyond even my own imagining. The seed Lena and I had planted, through trials, triumphs, and unspoken dreams, had grown into something magnificent, a living entity that connected people from every corner of the world. It was a living tapestry woven from the efforts of countless individuals who had come together to change the world. Melody, now the visionary behind the foundation's continued expansion, had turned it into a global movement. It wasn't merely about supporting artists. It had become a sanctuary for all creators, those seeking to amplify their voices, to share stories that had once been silenced. Through a series of international outreach programs, the foundation was no longer confined to the physical boundaries of the cities where we had started. It spread across continents, igniting new passions, creating collaborations that defied borders, and, in turn, shaping an interconnected world of artists that worked for the betterment of society. And then came the day the impossible happened. Our foundation was awarded the prestigious Luminary Award, a recognition given to organizations whose influence has profoundly shaped the world. The ceremony was filled with accolades and speeches. But when Melody took the stage to accept the award, the room grew silent. She wasn't one for theatrics or empty words, and her speech that day reflected the quiet wisdom that had guided her. "We did not build this," she began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "This wasn't just Lena and my father. This is all of you, the creators, the dreamers, the ones who keep the world alive with the spark of your imagination. What we did was create a space. What you did was fill it with meaning." It was a moment of catharsis. As I sat there, now a mere memory to those present, I could feel the weight of the years, of everything that had led to this moment. There was no need for recognition for what had been done. What mattered now was the countless lives that had been touched, the stories shared, the creativity that had transformed the world in ways I could never have fully understood. The foundation's impact had spread to countless areas far beyond the arts. It had become an engine for social change, a platform for tackling issues, such as inequality, climate change, and the preservation of cultures. What had begun with an idealistic dream of supporting the arts had evolved into a broader movement, one that gave people the space, the resources, and the belief that they could change the world. It was no longer just about creating for creation's sake. It was about creating for humanity, for progress, for future generations. In the years that followed, Melody's leadership continued to shine, guiding the foundation to greater heights. She had always been so like Lena, with that same quiet determination, but she had also become something uniquely her own, an embodiment of the legacy, but also a driving force toward the future. She passed on the values of compassion and perseverance, mentoring a new generation of young leaders who would one day take her place. In a sense, the work I had started, alongside Lena, had become a living testament to the fact that even when we leave the physical world, the energy of what we did continues to reverberate through time. Those who came after us carried that torch, lighting the way for others, just as we had once hoped to do for them. They did not inherit a foundation, but rather a living, breathing ecosystem that continued to grow, evolve, and impact the world in unexpected ways. It was not the money we'd raised, nor the recognition that we had received, that mattered most. It was the change, the impact. It was in the young artist who was able to pursue their craft because they had been given a scholarship. It was in the voices that had once been silenced, now rising to be heard. It was in the world that had become more open to different perspectives, to more human stories, to compassion. And in the end, that was the true meaning of the life I had led. Not what I had left behind, but what I had helped to create in others. The ripples of influence continued to spread outward, affecting lives and shaping destinies in ways far beyond what I could ever have imagined when I started on this journey. As I look back, from a place outside of time, I can only smile. We may have gone, but our work, our legacy, our dreams, they live on in the hearts of those who follow, in the stories they create, in the change they bring. For the true power of a life well lived is not in its final moments, but in the way it continues to reverberate through time, creating an endless loop of inspiration, love, and creation. And that truly is the greatest gift we can give. The end. Or perhaps, as it always was, another beginning. As the years bled into decades, the foundation became an institution, transcending its original purpose, its essence etched into the fabric of society itself. The legacy of those who had poured their hearts and souls into its creation. Lena, myself, Melody, and countless others, was now inextricably tied to the pulse of the world. The cycles of creativity continued to churn. Every year, new voices emerged, eager to share their visions, their stories, their passions. The stories of the past, however, never faded. They lived on, passed down like cherished heirlooms to the generations that followed. Each new creator built on the foundation laid before them, and the world became a tapestry, woven with diverse threads of culture, history, and hope. One day, many years after the global summit that had first heralded the transformation of the foundation, a small, humble exhibition opened in a forgotten corner of the city. It was unassuming, no grand announcements, no flashy marketing, just a quiet gathering of people who still believed in the quiet power of art. The walls were adorned with the works of unknown artists, those who had come to the foundation seeking guidance, seeking mentorship, and those who had been uplifted by the community of creators. As I walked through the exhibition, I noticed something curious. There was a recurring theme in the works. Each piece, whether painting or sculpture, photograph or poem, held a subtle message of resilience, of finding beauty in brokenness, of learning to love oneself and the world in spite of its flaws. It was as if the artists, in some profound way, had taken the lessons of the past and reflected them in their work, building a new world from the wreckage of their own pain, their own histories. And then, as if the universe had orchestrated the perfect moment, I saw her, Melody, now older, her hair streaked with silver, but her eyes still burning with the same passion I had seen in her youth. She was standing before a large mural, a breathtaking depiction of the journey the foundation had taken, its evolution, its expansion. It was a tribute to everyone who had made the impossible possible. Her eyes met mine, as if sensing my presence long before I had even spoken. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" she said, her voice soft, yet imbued with the quiet strength that had come to define her. I nodded, words failing me in that moment. There were no grand speeches to be made, no final acts of redemption. Just the pure realization that everything we had done, all the pain, all the sacrifices, had culminated in something extraordinary, something that would endure, not because of fame or wealth, but because of its inherent truth. "The world is different now," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "It's better." She smiled, that same calm smile I had always adored. "It always has been," she replied. "We just had to remind people." And in that simple statement, the weight of everything, the years of hardship, of uncertainty, of heartbreak, vanished. It was as if all that had been broken had been healed, not in some miraculous, grandiose way, but in the quiet, steady hands of those who had dared to hope, who had dared to dream. I knew then, as I stood before her, watching the mural come to life with the stories of every person who had been touched by the foundation, that our work would never truly be finished. It was a legacy that would live on in the hearts of those who carried the torch, who continued to share their stories and create beauty in a world that often seemed so broken. As the last visitors left the gallery that evening, I walked away with a final thought, a truth that had always been hidden in plain sight. Legacy wasn't something we could control, nor was it something that could be measured by awards or fame. It was the ripples we left behind in the world, the lives we touched, the hearts we changed. It was in the moments of quiet connection, in the whispers of encouragement, in the silent understanding that, through art, through love, we could all heal and become something greater. And as the world continued its turning, so too would the stories we had started, growing, evolving, ever-present, ever-changing. For as long as there were voices to speak, as long as there were hearts to beat, the journey would continue. And perhaps that, in the end, was the greatest legacy of all. Or in truth another beginning. The years continued to slip by, but the foundation, like a steady heartbeat, remained. It had become more than an institution. It had become a symbol of hope, a reminder of the transformative power of art and the resilience of the human spirit. As new leaders emerged, as young creators rose from the shadows of their struggles, the mission remained unchanged, though its expression adapted with the times. There was a certain beauty in watching it evolve, in seeing it outgrow its original purpose, morphing into something grander, more universal. Yet, amid all the growth, I couldn't help but return to the small moments, the quiet conversations, the acts of compassion that laid the foundation's roots. One particularly rainy evening, many years after the award ceremony, I found myself standing in a familiar spot, an old cafe in the heart of the city. The same cafe where I had first met Lena, where our dreams began to intertwine in that moment of serendipity. Now it was an entirely different place, yet still it was the same. It held the echoes of our past, the whispers of every conversation that had been held within its walls. A young artist entered, soaking wet from the rain, his clothes clinging to him, his eyes wide with the uncertainty of youth. I could see the familiar spark in his gaze, the hunger, the desire to create, the longing for recognition, the fear of failure. As he approached the counter, his eyes met mine, and in that instant, it was as though the years melted away, and I saw him for what he was, a reflection of the person I had once been. He hesitated for a moment, unsure whether to approach or remain in the background, but then he made the decision to take a seat across from me. His nervousness was palpable, but I could see the glimmer of something else, something deeper. Are you the one they talk about?" he asked, his voice unsure. I smiled, a soft, knowing smile. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just someone. Who knows what it's like to feel lost and unsure? His eyes flickered with recognition. I've heard stories about the foundation, the way you changed everything. I paused, taking in the weight of his words. We didn't change everything. We just gave people a space to be themselves, to create without fear. The rest, that's all you. The young man leaned forward, his eyes full of questions. But how? How did you know it was worth it? How did you know you were doing the right thing? I thought for a moment, feeling the weight of his inquiry. There was no easy answer, no formula for success. But there was one thing that had always been true. You trust, I said finally. You trust that the work you put into the world will reach someone, even if you don't see it immediately. You trust that what you create, in whatever form it takes, has value, and you trust that the people you surround yourself with, people who understand the journey, will guide you, even when you can't see the way forward. He seemed to absorb the words, nodding slowly. And if it doesn't work out? What if I fail? I smiled again, this time with a sense of serenity that came with years of experience. Failure isn't the end. It's part of the process. But you don't fail alone. And when you fall, someone will be there to pick you up. He sat back in his chair, taking a deep breath, as though the weight of his anxieties had lifted just a little. I'll keep that in mind. As the rain continued to pour outside, I felt a deep sense of fulfillment. There was something beautiful about passing the torch, about seeing the next generation ready to take on the world. I knew I would never be the one to lead them down the path, but I had planted the seeds, and now they would grow, unfurling in ways that even I couldn't predict. As I left the cafe that evening, the sounds of the city filled my ears, the hum of life continuing, of stories unfolding, of dreams taking root in the hearts of those brave enough to chase them. And in that moment, I realized something profound. Legacy, true legacy, wasn't something bound to a single person, a single event, or even a single lifetime. It was woven into the fabric of humanity itself, stitched together by countless hands, countless hearts, and countless dreams. It was something that lived on, not in monuments or accolades, but in the quiet, unspoken ways in which we touched each other's lives. The end? Perhaps, but as always, the beginning of something new. As the years drifted forward, the idea of legacy began to shift in my mind. I no longer saw it as something fixed or defined by what I had done, but rather as an ongoing process, like the ripple of water after a stone is thrown. The foundation had long outgrown its beginnings, but its essence remained the same. A place for creation, for transformation, for the simple, unshakable belief that art could heal, change, and unify. I moved further into the background, my name no longer as central to the story. The new generation of creators, artists, musicians, writers, thinkers, carried the torch forward. They had their own struggles, their own battles to fight. But there was an unmistakable thread that connected them to the work we had all started. Each new project, each new collaboration was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, to the power of creation, and to the simple belief that beauty could be found even in the most fractured places. Yet, even as I took a step back, I couldn't entirely detach myself from the world that had become my second family. There were still moments when I would find myself walking into a gallery, hearing a song on the radio, or reading a piece of writing, and there it was, the unmistakable echo of something I had been a part of, something bigger than any one of us. But life, as it often does, had a way of twisting, changing, and reminding us of the fleeting nature of time. It was a late afternoon when I received the call. The voice on the other end was familiar, yet it had changed. It was Melody. "Are you sitting down?" she asked, her tone serious but soft. "Melody?" I replied, a sudden knot forming in my stomach. "What's going on?" "It's Lena," she said. "She's gone." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Lena had always been the rock, always steady, always the one who believed in the dream when no one else did. To think of her gone was almost unthinkable. "How?" I whispered, the word barely making it past my lips. She passed away. Last night. It was unexpected. A heart attack," Melody said, her voice breaking, though she was trying to stay composed. She had been feeling off for a while, but no one expected this. For a long moment, I couldn't speak. Lena's absence left a hollow space in the world, one that I wasn't sure could ever be filled. She had been the person who, more than anyone else, believed in the impossible. She had been the one who had given me a chance when I had no right to expect it, and now she was gone. I don't know what to say," I finally whispered. "You don't have to say anything," Melody responded. "But we need to gather. There's a service, a memorial. We need to honor her." And so, without hesitation, I knew what had to be done. The foundation, the legacy we had built together, could not simply exist as a tribute. It had to evolve, even in the wake of such a profound loss. This was the true test, the test of whether what we had created could stand the test of time, even when the ones who had shaped it were no longer there to guide it. In the days that followed, we gathered not just to mourn, but to celebrate Lena's life. The memorial was filled with stories of her tenacity, her vision, her unyielding belief that art could change the world. People from all walks of life came together to share their memories of her. The walls of the space were adorned with her art, with pieces she had crafted, not just in the tangible sense, but in the intangible way she had shaped all of our lives. And as I stood there, surrounded by those whose lives had been touched by Lena, I realized something profound. The legacy wasn't about any one person. It wasn't about Lena or Melody or me. It was about all of us, the collective effort, the shared vision, the bond between creators. The art we had made, the people we had inspired, it would continue, long after we were gone. As I left the memorial that evening, the weight of the world seemed a little less heavy. Lena's passing, though devastating, had illuminated something crucial. It wasn't the end of the foundation, nor the end of our story. It was a transition, a reminder that creation was a cycle, and even in grief something new could emerge. And so life continued in its unpredictable, beautiful way. There were new challenges, new faces, and new moments of triumph. But one thing remained constant: the belief that art, in all its forms, was more than just creation. It was the very heartbeat of existence, a way to transcend time, to heal, and to connect. In the quiet moments, when the world outside seemed still, I would sometimes close my eyes and imagine the faces of those who had come before me, those who had helped build the foundation. Lena's face, Melody's, my own, and so many others. And I knew, deep in my heart, that the work we had done was not in vain. It had made a difference, and it would continue to make a difference long after the last of us had faded into the annals of history.